I've been making predictions about the Switch 2 for quite a few years now, but next week, we finally get to find out all the details and if I got it right or if I missed it. Today, I'll be going through all my predictions and doing a recap of every prediction I've made over the last couple years, and if you don't want to stay for each one, you just want a quick wrap-up, you can skip to the end of the video. I've got a summary at the end there. But before we get started, if you enjoy this video and my content, please take the time to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And so today I'll be going through hardware predictions first, then software with the launch titles, and then finally we'll talk about the price and the release date. So there's chapters in here if YouTube's working correctly today. Feel free to skip to what you're interested in, but now let's go through the details. First, let's start with the most obvious thing. Hopefully, the Switch 2 is going to be able to output 4K to your TV, because the Switch 1 can only do 1080p. But let's take a look back at what I said about a year ago. Modern TVs, since really about the time the Switch 1 came out, have all been 4K. You're almost impossible to find one that is 1080p these days, so 4K is a must in terms of what's being output from the HDMI jack. And so Nintendo's core audience, at least at launch, is going to be those of us that are looking for a better 4K experience in their home theater. And then it's supposedly got an 8-inch LCD screen, but maybe that LCD is for a reason. I am personally hopeful that that means that this screen is going to have something special to it, like maybe it's got HDR built in, and then maybe it can even do higher than 60 Hertz. Maybe it can do 90 Hertz or 120 Hertz. And so yeah, I really wasn't expecting that 120 Hertz screen, more of a hope there, but it seems like, according to the latest leaks, we're actually going to get that. Not only is it going to be 120 frames per second, but it'll also be variable refresh rate, and it'll have HDR color. This is great news, not just for people looking at that screen, but for people wanting those features on their television sets as well. Now, of course, this isn't official yet. We have to wait till next week to find out officially what we're getting from Nintendo, and they don't always go into all the details about the tech specs. They might tell us about the 120 Hertz, but they might not mention the HDR or the VRR. That's just kind of how Nintendo rolls. And so now let's go over my prediction for the chipset. A lot of this comes from leaks, but the compute units, that's one that I predicted, even though it's now also been pretty much confirmed by the leakers as well. It's going to probably have what's called the T239 chip from NVIDIA in it, and it's based on the Ampere technology. And that means it's got, all the features of that Generation 2, including like ray tracing and machine learning acceleration for DLSS. It's most likely powered by the Orin chipset from NVIDIA that they've been using in the Jetson line, but what we don't know is how many cores it has. The top-end model does, I think, 2,048 compute units, but they've got lower-end models that go down to like 1,000. So I'm thinking Nintendo's probably taking somewhere in between, around 1,500. And most of these specs are pretty well known now, pretty well agreed upon, but we're not going to find out about these until after the system comes out and we get some people doing some teardowns, maybe some developer leaks to tell us for sure. But we've got a pretty good idea that this is true. And yeah, here is a chart that Digital Foundry made a while back comparing what this chip is probably going to have compared to the bigger, more powerful Orin that is in the same line. And then also a RTX 2050, although the 3050 is probably more accurate to the power we can expect out of this little guy. And so now let's talk about RAM and storage. Yeah, somewhere between 12 and 16 gigabytes of memory. I'm probably going to predict it's 12. How much storage space does it have? What's the hard drive like on it? Maybe 128 on the low end, maybe 512 at the high end, but probably somewhere around 256 for what's built into the Switch. And then you can go out and buy like a terabyte or something from an SD card. And so now, thanks to leakers, both 12 gigabytes of RAM and the 256 gigabytes of storage are mostly confirmed. Also, we've already seen up to 2 terabyte SD Express cards available for pre-order at some game sellers. Now, Nintendo has shown us that, yes, the Joy-Cons are going to connect directly into the system with magnets instead of using rails to slide down into. But these new Joy-Cons have some mysteries to them. First off, there's a button on the back that a lot of questions are around. I made a video about that and put out some ideas. I'm pretty much dropping those ideas now. I think it's just a release button. But there was the idea that it could be an extra trigger in some cases. And the thing that's really got everybody interested is that C button. the little button at the bottom of the right Joy-Con. We're not sure what C stands for, but the general consensus is that it's something along the lines of chat or communicate, some kind of way to activate either a microphone or a chat room or some kind of communication tool. Maybe a group chat or something comes up when you press that. We'll just have to find out next week. But here's a little bit more about what I said about it a while back. And then supposedly there's going to be a microphone built into the system now. So that's probably going to be the quirk that makes this different. The way Nintendo likes to do things. They always have to have some kind of little quirk to their systems. And so the actual quirk is looking to be something that I didn't predict at all, that you're going to be able to take these Joy-Cons, put them on their side, and use them like mice, like a computer mouse. And I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be widely used or used in just a handful of games where it makes sense. We'll have to see what Nintendo tells us next week. And now let's talk backwards compatibility. This is probably the most important topic to me, personally, but let's see what I said last June. It needs to have backwards compatibility, and it needs to be able to enhance your old games. Let them run at a higher frame rate. If they have dynamic resolution, let them run at a higher resolution. I want a Switch 2 so I can play my Switch 1 games at a better quality. Hopefully this means that we're going to get better performance out of our existing catalog and we don't have to pay Nintendo money to get an upgrade. It's completely possible that you get no upgrade playing your games in back compat, and if you want that upgrade, you have to pay for it. So yeah, we know for a fact it's going to have backwards compatibility, but we don't know what that's going to mean in terms of if you get an enhancement to your old games, or if they play pretty much exactly the same. Just earlier today, while I'm recording this, Nintendo has come out with the virtual game card system. This is going to be utilized for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, it would seem, and on their website, some people have noticed that in the fine print, it even says you cannot share a Nintendo exclusive title with a Switch 1. Now, the concerning bit is it also said you cannot share a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of a game. That implies we're going to get some remasters, and Nintendo might charge us for them. Maybe this will be limited to big games like Zelda and Pokemon, or maybe we'll see a whole slew of these things. But hopefully, we're going to get some kind of boost for free just by having the more powerful hardware and the way that games are able to scale, sometimes. Now, another interesting point of data is this patent that I reported on a few months back. Some patents have recently been discovered that were filed back in June by Nintendo, and they have schematics for a cartridge. The surprising thing is, this cartridge looks almost identical to the current Switch's cartridge. This could potentially mean we see Nintendo putting both Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions of the same game on the same cartridge. So you buy the cartridge once and you can play it in both systems and get the correct version. And so yeah, as well, there may be digital editions that are somehow limited to just on the Switch 2. It still seems likely, or at least possible, that we could see cartridges that contain both the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions, so you don't have to buy both. Now, maybe I'm being hopeful here, but, a patent is not a guarantee. It just means that Nintendo has looked into this. We'll have to see for sure next week. Alright, so I think that's most of the hardware covered. Let's talk software. What are the launch titles? Or at least the games coming out within the launch window, which is usually about 6 to 9 months after a game console comes out. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you. I'm going to predict that we're getting the console around sometime this summer. So anything that comes out from the summer to the end of the year, I consider launch window. And so first up, let's talk Mario. And then, of course, there's going to be a new Mario game. The rumors are saying that it's probably going to be a launch title, and I feel like that makes a lot of sense to launch with the Mario game. And it's been, 7 years, I guess, since we had a new 3D Mario game, so it's about time for one. And so back in my original prediction, I thought for sure we were getting 3D Mario first, but I don't think that's going to be the case now. During the first reveal, the little tidbit we got was we saw some of what looks like Mario Kart 9. And hopefully that's going to be a day one release. But for the 3D Mario, I still think we're going to get it in the launch window sometime before Christmas this year. Additionally, there have been rumors that we're going to get some kind of new 3D Donkey Kong game, but I don't really have many details on that one. And then, let's talk Zelda for a minute. We'll get another Zelda game, but that's probably not coming till 2028. What I do think we could see is sometime this year, we find out that Wind Waker Remastered is coming to the Switch, playable on Switch 1 and Switch 2. So that's my prediction. I think we're going to get a Wind Waker Remaster in 4K, available for the Switch 2 and also in 1080p on the Switch 1. But we're going to get that remaster that everybody's been talking about for years now, finally this year in 2025. And additionally, next year, I think we'll see a Twilight Princess remaster for its 20th anniversary. But let's get back to games coming out this year. Metroid Prime 4 was just shown off at this latest Direct for Switch 1, and I think we're going to see it again next week as a showcase for what a cross-gen title can look like, comparing the Switch 1 version with the Switch 2 version. I don't think it's going to be a massive difference. You're not going to get like crazy ray-traced reflections or some kind of lighting overhaul, but what we will get is higher resolutions and better frame rates and also better texture quality. In fact, it might even go up to 120 Hz if the rumors are true about the screen. And so one last prediction I want to throw in is about the GameCube and Nintendo Switch Online. And could mean that we're going to see GameCube games coming to the Virtual Console. Now initially I got this idea from the possible trigger on the back, maybe having to do with playing them in single Joy-Con mode, but I still think that the part where it's coming to NSO is true. And it would only make sense as we've gotten new generations of older generation hardware each time Nintendo takes us to their next console. We've got everything up through Nintendo 64 at this point, so GameCube is really the most logical next step. So now onto the thing I think everyone's probably wondering the most about: how much is it going to cost and when does it come out? I've got a couple surprising things in my predictions about the price, but let's go back to what I said a few months ago. Nintendo is not going to be $300 this time around. I'm going to predict it's going to be closer to $400. $399. Which is a number I think a lot of people are okay with, but there's a catch. That price point means you're only getting the system without a dock. So I know that sounds a little crazy. How can they sell the Switch without a dock? But I think that's how they're going to hit that price point. Because with the dock, it's going to be probably closer to $500. Really more like $475. And so now the idea here is that, first off, if people only are interested in playing handheld, they don't need a dock, right? But then for most people, you're going to want a dock. However, most people that are going to buy the Switch 2 already own a Switch 1 with a dock. And recently it's been shown that the body of the new system is exactly 14 millimeters thick, just like the original Switch, meaning it can fit right in there. So I'm taking a bit of a leap here on this one, but I really think the only way Nintendo gets it down to $400 is to not include the dock and to make it separate or part of a optional bundle. And that's not even taking into account the whole tariff situation. But yeah, that's it. $400 for the base system, no dock. And then upwards, probably closer to $500 for when you get it with a dock. But now let's talk about, when does this thing come out? My initial guess was right now for March of this year. Didn't get that one right originally. Let's go back for a second. We might see it in June. Nintendo did release one of the Game Boys in June way back, and I don't think they're going to hold on all the way to next fall. I'm pretty sure summer of next year is the latest they're going to be releasing it. But I did caveat that it could be as late as June, and that is pretty much my new prediction. Let me play you the more recent video. And the last three systems all came out on a Friday. New 3DS, Friday. Switch, Friday. Switch OLED, Friday. So May 30th is a really good possibility. The other possibility I'm thinking of is 1 week after that, on June 6th. That's also a Friday, and it also gives us the very memorable 6/6/2025, much like they had 3/3/2017 for the first Switch. But to pick one, I guess I'm just going to say my prediction is now June 6th will be the release date for the system worldwide. And if not that, going to be May 30th, maybe June 1st, but somewhere between that May 30th to June 6th window is when I expect to see the console come out. And this still holds true for me. I really think June 6th is the date. It kind of just makes sense to go with a symmetrical date like that because of different countries and the way some people put the month first and then the number. Some people put the day first and then the month. But in this case, no matter which way you do it, it's always correct because they're the same number. And that just makes marketing easier for Nintendo. Okay, somehow the rest of my video did not get recorded properly, so I won't be on camera for the remainder of the video. Alright, so let's go over all of my predictions now. First up, the system will have a 4K output to your TV, and then an 8-inch screen with 120 Hz, VRR and HDR support on the handheld itself. You'll be using a custom NVIDIA chip with an ARM CPU and Ampere GPU with 1536 shader units. It will have 12 gigabytes of memory and 256 gigabytes of onboard storage that's expandable with SD Express cards. It will have a microphone, and then the mystery C button is somehow related to that microphone. The Joy-Cons will also double as mice when you put them on their sides. And then when playing in backwards compatibility mode, we should see some kind of enhanced boost mode for these older games, giving them better frame rates, better resolutions, and things like that. During the first few years of the Switch 2's life, we'll see cross-gen games that have both the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions on the same cartridge. Mario Kart 9 will be the big launch title to come out on day one. And then, later in the year, we'll get a 3D platforming Mario just in time for the holiday. Also, at some point this year, we'll get a remaster of Wind Waker in 4K. And Metroid Prime 4 will have a special Switch 2 version that is a showcase of the differences between the power of the two systems. Nintendo 64 games will come to Nintendo Switch Online. The Switch 2 will be $400. But that means you're getting just the system. If you get it in a bundle with the dock, it's going to be closer to $500. And the Switch 2 will work in original Switch 1 docks. And lastly, the Switch 2 will be coming out on June 6th, 2025. Alright, I think that's everything. We'll find out next week how close I got. Thanks for watching. This video went a little off the rails toward the end. It's been a bit of a challenge to get it out this week in time, but yeah, hopefully I got it right. We'll see next week. If you've got some alternate ideas, drop them down in the comments. If you liked the video, like it, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you next time.